Fine.
Okay. So we have, all right. We have lots of people in our waiting room. They're coming in. Give them a few minutes to get in, get comfortable, find good seats down front so they can hear well and see well.
Right, right. So they can go, ooh, 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 I have a question.
And then we'll go through all of the things we have to go through at the beginning, all the administrative stuff.
All right.
So I'm going to give it another minute, and so we get everybody in here. All right. So the thing about our webinars, welcome to First Steps Financial's Financial Foundations webinars. We start on time and we end on time. Today, we are very lucky, and I am so excited. I have known Walter for years, and I'm so excited that he is here to talk about turning around companies and if your company's doing well, how to have longevity in those companies. So Walter Simpson, I will tell you all about him, has helped more than 60 companies restore their financial health by refocusing on core products and core customers. This approach enables the kind of business reset required for long-term success. He began his career as an international banker before being called back to support his family's printing business. And that experience sparked a passion for helping businesses navigate these challenges. And it led him to develop this distinctive strategic perspective. And I think you will find his perspective slightly controversial. So have an open mind. Walter holds a BA from Columbia University and an MBA from NYU Stern School of Business. And he lives in Irvine, California with his wife, Valerie, and their adult children are nearby. So welcome, Walter.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to see you in this context. As you said, we've known each other a long time, and I love laughing with you. And no, I'm not
This is a man
controversial.
that knows me. See?
No, no, I am not controversial. You are controversial.
Well, if anybody has any questions, Walter's going to go through his what he has found to work in over 60 companies and this strategy. And if you have questions at any time, put them in the chat and we will answer them as we go along. So this is going to be interactive. There's going to be different points where we have a few minutes where you can ask questions about how to understand the strategy, how to apply it, anything like that. So please feel free, put the questions in the chat and we will answer them. Anything we don't get to, Walter has graciously agreed to answer by email. So, Walter, please take it away. Tell us
Okay.
about this core philosophy that you have.
Thank you so much. And again for the opportunity to speak to your group. And for the folks who may not know First Steps and that team, they just do a fabulous job. So I'm so pleased to be with you. So as
Thank you.
you said, Lisa, my name is Walter Simpson, and I've made a career of helping companies in turnarounds in their most distressing moments. Now, we tend to think of a turnaround as a sudden event, that the
Mm,
company experienced some sort of a sudden problem that dramatically and kind of surprisingly hurt the company's fortunes. I don't find that to be true. I find in general that company uh, survival is not something that occurs or degrades suddenly one time, but is almost, you can chart it to say after 1 year, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, after 1 year, 20% of the companies that started in the last year fail. 65% of the companies that started in 1 year will fail after 10 years, 80% after 20 years. And if you chart this, you can almost imagine that the companies are experiencing incremental degradation. The things that they started with great hope and prosperity in the first 10 years are no longer working after 10 years. If it worked after 10 years, it's no longer working after 20 years. And so the reason I call this three soul-searching questions you want to ask your company is that I have a point of view is that uh, uh, this company degradation or a turnaround or the necessity to have a dramatic improvement in financial results doesn't happen dramatically. It happens incrementally.
And
And
it's
so,
true. And Walter and I have both seen this in companies where you identify the issue and it's an ignored thing. Typically, it's something that they already know, but they ignore it.
right. So accumulated conditions cause financial distress. And so I'm proposing that we talk about these three types of questions that will help you address and prevent the kind of company survival that you have here. In other words, by asking and answering three or four very important questions on an ongoing basis, you're going to ensure your company's survival. Now, when when I go into a company, I've actually had at one point I had a young the receptionist cry. So why are you crying? I'm just you know, is there something wrong? She said, "You're too young to be a hatchet man." Right? So when a company is in financial distress, our popular press, our popular imagination says that we're going to need something that is dramatic, disciplined, perhaps even controlled, perhaps even undisciplined. We want something that's irrevocable. We want something that finally puts an end to the financial distress we see. And so the tool that people always talk about is the hatchet.
So why do you think they picked this? Why
Well,
did they pick the hatchet?
oh, well, thank you for, thank you for, your, as an I'm going to pick on accountants for a second.
Go ahead, pick
Okay.
away. We got you.
Okay. If an accountant, and by the way, I'm going to come back and I'm going to redeem the whole accounting discussion. But
Okay.
in this instance, if an accountant says, okay, Acme Corp, you have revenue, and I see your bottom line is a loss. Revenue and loss, I know what's necessary. Cut expenses.
Yep.
Right?
That's
Okay,
what typical accounting departments would say.
right. But here's the thing. And by the way, I wouldn't say accounting because management accounting is part of the solution. I would say external sources, banks,
Yeah.
a board of directors, or your tax advisor, cut expenses, right? It's kind of a generalized discussion. Here's what they don't say. If you are a CFO of a company that is losing money, every day when you wake up, you're wondering, where can I cut expenses? Every day before you go to sleep, you're wondering, where can I cut expenses? The CEO, most CEOs do not have pots and pots and pots of money that they're spending extra money on. They'll just say, oh, I'm going to cut expenses. It's a hard decision. You tell someone to cut expenses, you're just adding to the anxiety. You're really not adding to the discussion.
No.
So for me, the the whole expense question, and I felt this myself in my first turnaround. I spent a year looking at financial statements, looking for expenses to cut, and couldn't find them. We cut 401k contributions, we cut travel and entertainment. There was a receptionist, the poor lady lost her job. That didn't help the company because we weren't cutting where it mattered.
And you
Here's
didn't solve the problem.
Didn't solve the problem. Here's the perspective that I've come to believe, and I'm going to make a, a an effort to convince you that uh, that this is the way to think about it. And by the way, it's my mantra to turn around a company. All you need is to focus on your core products and core customers. Make make your core products, sell them to core customers. Now, to me, that's kind of like the map of how to fix the turnaround. And we're going to go through a little bit of the map today. If I were to tell you, if I were to give you a map of your hometown and turn it sideways and say, here, find your house, you would look at that piece of paper and go, but you're telling me to do something you haven't given me the right tool. To me, that's
Mhm.
the expense cutting. I gave here, cut expenses, find your house. Oh, the map's upside down. Well, that's not my problem, right?
Mhm.
Core products, core customers is a way of orienting every turnaround situation or every, let's call it performance improvement situation to ask the right questions. Core products, core
And
customers.
that is, and that's something that I think we forget is asking the right questions. And sometimes that's hard to do.
Well, let's talk about, we're going to talk about that in a second. We're going to talk
Okay.
about the role of objectivity, right?
Okay.
Because the questions that we're going to be asking and answering today, I think are questions that the participants today can ask of their own company, or if they're advisors, they can ask of another company. I think you will always find it's easier to have the discussion with someone who's objective,
Mm.
right? Okay, I said that the tool is not the hatchet.
No.
What tools do we need? In my work, working with companies from 5 million to 500 million in revenue, I found it easiest to just describe two basic functions of the company. And uh, they're organized differently in a $5 million company than a $500 million company. But the fact remains, we really just need two tools. One is the telescope. The telescope is the tool that tells us what's happening outside the four walls of the company. The telescope is sales and marketing and market research and understanding technology, understanding the competition, understanding what is our business environment, and how do we meet customer needs? Anything outside of the four walls of the company.
And this and I know you say it's 5 million to 200 million, but I also feel as though even on the smaller side, companies that are like 1 million to 5 million, it still affects them too. They can do the same questions. They can have the same tools that you need to look and see what's going on outside your company and be aware of it and make an assessment on it.
Right.
Um, Market rates will affect a title company. And there are other, outside factors, tariffs affect any company that might be
True.
exposed to it.
All I'm saying, my experience in general, my experience goes from about 5 million,
Yeah.
from
But
about 5 million.
it applies to
Right.
across the
Of
board.
course. Any company size.
Yeah.
Telescope,
Yeah.
telescope outside the four walls of your company. What's the
Yeah.
microscope good for? The microscope is the tool that you use inside the four walls of your company. And I break that down into two aspects. Number one, do you have accurate financial information? Do you receive your financial information on a timely basis? When you see the financial information, especially when compared to a budget, and I hope you have a budget, do you say, what are we going to do about it? In other words, financial information without activity, without a determination to change, isn't very useful. So
Do
that
you,
whole set,
I'm sorry, why do you think so many, in your experience, why do you think so many founders, CEOs avoid the microscope, avoid this part? They go right for the hatchet. They don't go to this.
yeah, yeah, I think, look, the truth is that when a company that's in trouble, um, I would say about two-thirds are from lack of internal control.
Mm.
And
So
it
it's
because they
really
see it
like,
as an expense.
yeah,
So I've had hundreds of people tell me, there's nothing you can tell me about my accounting. There's nothing you can tell me about my hiring or culture or people or
really.
procedures that I can't fix with my next order. Don't waste my time. I just need
Oh,
the
so
ne
sales.
I just
Sales are
need
going
the
to
next
fix it.
order. I need the next order, right? Have it's and it's very it, it's very common, very
Yeah,
understandable.
yeah,
Because, and by the way, it's a lot more fun to go out, get an order, ring the bell and go, I got one.
that's very true.
But so these are, to me, these are your foundations.
Mm.
If you're building a house and you say, you know what, I really want beautiful bay windows, I really want a beautiful view, I really want a beautiful kitchen, and you don't have, I don't know, a foundation,
A foundation that'll support that beautiful kitchen that
A
has the
foundation.
Viking stove that weighs 600 pounds.
Right. Right.
It could be a
Bring in
problem.
bring in your 400-pound pizza oven and watch it fall through the floor. Right. And so
Interesting.
uh, it takes experience to know that you need your financial infrastructure and your process and human capital and
Mm,
procedural infrastructure to support the business.
mm,
But it is the fact is that many people are addicted to finding the next revenue,
mhm.
and they think that the revenue is going to solve it. What
Yeah.
I'm here to suggest is that errors in revenue, errors in finance, errors in execution are what we're going to be exploring today. And I talk about errors in business. Um, Now, in our business culture, we don't like to talk about errors.
No.
Where CEOs like to be kind of Superman, my strategy is this, and we talk in very large and kind of self-aggrandizing terms. And you say, what kind of error have you made? Said, error, are you trying to insult me?
Mm,
No, it is not an insult. My perspective is companies find their core most easily by reviewing their history and looking for errors.
mhm.
And that those errors are what caused that degradation of financial performance that we showed in the company graph. Why
And
errors?
I think
Because
you're right.
let me
Like,
let me get my let me hit
go
my
ahead.
I got to tell my joke.
Go ahead.
So but it is true. So errors happen in companies naturally. I
Mhm,
say errors happen in companies the way injuries happen in athletics. It's part of playing the game. There
mhm.
is no shame in it. Let's examine it and rehabilitate ourselves and get back in the game. I'm sorry,
So
go ahead.
by the time someone comes to you, they are past the point of feeling ashamed about their errors, right? I mean, they are already like, yes, please come help me.
Well, look, entrepreneurial perspective often doesn't ask for help easily.
No.
I mean, uh, let me rethink that. I mean, we're developing a coaching culture, but I think a lot of type A personalities say, I have my strategy, I have my direction, I have where we're going. If it's not working, they absorb it themselves. And what's the first thing that someone feels when their company's not doing well? They feel depressed, they lack sleep, they mull over what could they do better.
Yep.
And
And they take it on.
there's a real mental health aspect of it. And I probably that's also part of being a turnaround manager, to try to be present for the people who are going through it,
Mm,
to convince them that we're going to be talking about strategies that may or may not be ones you've thought of before, may or may not be easy, but it's for the better,
yeah.
for the greater good.
I'm glad that you mentioned that about mental health because it is. I don't think people think about business owners and understand how what their mental state is, especially in this situation when things are not going in the direction you want them to go in. And sometimes you are afraid to look at the errors, but it's it's great that you have humility when working with them.
I'd say I'm in the humility business,
Yeah.
re-examining prior assumptions.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the three questions.
Hmm.
And because the three questions that we talked about, these soul searching questions, are questions of, have I committed errors? And the errors will come in the three varieties. You saw these ideograms before. The light bulb for strategy. Am I pursuing the wrong revenue? The spreadsheet for finance. But more specifically, do I understand my costs? Do I understand how my P&L is constructed? And the delivery truck for processes for, are we are we suffering from inefficiencies and waste? And by the way, each of these errors has a little slightly different psychology. Remember, revenue is, we want more revenue. I've never heard of wrong revenue. Right? More revenue is good.
No, those two words don't go together
Right.
usually.
So that's a different psychology. So we kind of obsessively look for more revenue, and misunderstanding our costs are, sometimes our organizations say, we're really good at this, this, and this, but we're not so good at this. And the thing that they're not so good at is costs. And we sometimes kind of shrug our shoulders. Not so good at costs. And by the way, that's a little bit like a home builder saying, yeah, I build for homes. I'm not so good at foundations, right?
That would be
And
problematic.
and the third psychology in inefficiencies and waste, I've almost never talked about inefficiencies and waste where someone say, oh, we knew about that. We knew about
Wow.
that, right? Inefficiencies and waste. Let me give you a couple of examples before we get into any further. You put in a new system. Oh, I yeah, the system, what one system is working really well, one system isn't. You buy a company and it's got different procedures for hiring people. Yeah, we've been aware of that. We've wanted to address that. You hire a salesman and he hasn't been trained. Yeah, he's out there for a while. We got it right. Now what happens is if you don't know the costs of these things, you're letting your company be dragged down. But
Absolutely.
almost never do I say, by the way, do you realize you have two systems? Of course I realize I have two systems. What are you
They
stupid?
know, and they don't know what to do about it.
Well,
Don't
so the
know what to
psychologies are different.
fix.
Pursuing wrong revenue, they think it's the right thing to do. Misunderstanding costs, we say it's an excusable lapse, and inefficiencies are something we've been meaning to get to. Different psychologies. That's why they're soul
Yeah.
searching. These are the questions you have to ask, and you or your client, you ask because they're kind of different, they hit different parts of the brain. So we're going
So
to talk about, go ahead.
I know I was going to say, so it actually goes with this. It's like, so how often do you find that a failings company savior is a legacy product that they've simply just neglected or deprioritized?
Well, we're going to about to talk about that, but I think the real answer to your question is almost all of them. And
Mm,
why? Because in the world, let's talk about strategy. The name of my book is Core Turnaround Strategy. Turnaround strategy is short-term strategy. What can I do quickly? Because by definition, a turnaround does not have extra capital. We
mm.
don't have Elon Musk saying, here's $1 billion, develop a product. Sometimes we act that way, though. Sometimes
And
we act as if I know I'm running a good business, but I really want to have my core product really should be something AI centered. My core product should be something that has something technological or something that I
something
perceive the
different.
market is going. So we
Mm,
develop a new product with perhaps not a dedicated effort, or we do it alongside our legacy product because we're trying to grow revenue.
mhm,
I mean, it's not a character flaw. It's simply we're trying to get it when you're in a core turnaround, the strategy is short term. You must return to your core. Your core
mm.
by definition is legacy. So to
Okay.
answer your question, almost always, the
Almost
the
always.
the
Okay.
three questions say the first one is we made a strategy error. The second one is we made a measurement error. It hides what our core is or what our legacy is. And the third one is we're making execution errors that are dragging the profitability of that legacy. But
Mm,
to answer your question, probably
probably.
100%.
Wow. That's really
Because
so
that's the core. By definition,
so
your
and it's
legacy is your
important
core,
to know what your core product is. If you don't, okay.
right?
All right.
You ready?
Um,
We're gonna jump in. Shoe company, printing company, restaurant company. And each of them had where I'm going to emphasize the tools and the questions that they asked, and you're going to see that the first thing we started with was not the hatchet.
mm,
We didn't start by trying to destroy the company and then saying where are we? This is a shoe company, a lovely company where the new management team decided, by the way, just in the way that we're talking about, they had an idea that they could knock off one of the most prestigious shoes in the world, a very famous, uh, low profile, light, glued sole, uh, Italian looking loafer. And they were going to sell these prestigious shoes to the most prestigious retailers in the world and the most admired companies in the world. And from a market opportunity, it probably was not a bad idea
Mm.
because it was a sought after item. It was very attractive, and people were buying them.
So all
In
those
develop,
things sound really good.
it
Like
sounds great,
I could see making that decision. I could see
right?
saying like, okay, so where'd it go wrong?
Yeah. Well, so the product development process, they didn't have a dedicated product development team. They developed kind of as a side product, a project, put out the product. It was not quite right. It wasn't quite ready. The factories were not quite tooled. They started to have things coming in late. Now, this is a company that sold to mom and pops and to other important retailers. But the one thing about a mom and pop is when you send them uh, a UPS shipment of shoes on Tuesday, they don't say but you're late. It was supposed to be here last Wednesday. They say, well, I'm going to stock them now. If you go to a prestigious retailer and you say, we're going to have a splash opening and you're late,
Yeah.
I almost said something indelicate. You're, it's bad. And this happened because they made an error. This is again, not a character flaw. These were not bad people. They made an error. They tried to develop a product. They put a lot of effort and capital into the new product, and they made a push to enter into a new market at the same time. And by the way, kids, when doing this at home, never introduce a new product into a new market at the same time. Please introduce it into your legacy market first. Prove it out. But uh, be that as it may, new product, new market, and the company was losing a lot of money. In the course of discussions with the team, said the product is zero gross margin, and the product the customer isn't paying us. Is there an alternative? There was a men's dress military shoe, and by the way, I don't have a very um, uh, able fashion. I'm not a good fashionista, but even I can see that shoe, that's an ugly shoe.
That's an ugly shoe.
That's an ugly
And
shoe.
most military shoes are pretty ugly.
That ugly shoe had a 40% gross margin. And that
Wow.
ugly shoe was being sold. And I don't know fashion retailers. But I know that commissary is no fashion retailer. But
Hmm.
they paid out they're part of the base exchange system. They paid in 35 days. So a
Yeah.
45% margin shoe selling to someone who pays you your price and on time, that's good. So here's what I'm
That's really
saying.
good.
These companies talking about the revenue, talking about the legacy product, they made a strategy error. They deviated from their core product. They deviated from their core customer. And over time, by recognizing that and refocusing the company on the core, we restored the profitability of the business. So
Mm.
going back to the P&L, the accounting uh, uh, ledger that we had before, which is, by the way I started out. I know that you're young. You probably started out with you started out with Excel version
Computer.
10,
Yeah. Yeah.
but this was my ledger,
Okay.
uh, and the P&L was dramatically improved, primarily, not exclusively, primarily through the strategy decision. We're
Mm.
going to focus back on legacy products, and we're going to focus back on legacy customers for
And it
an
all
improvement of
comes
gross
down,
margin.
one thing that I do notice about everything you're saying, it all comes down to the accounting. So if I hear
Oh,
again somebody telling me how accounting's not important,
yeah,
it does. It's
yeah.
it's how you know if you're winning.
Look,
It's
the thing about accounting is, uh, I teach leadership and I teach accounting, and people are surprised. I said no leader can be a good leader without accounting, and
good.
every accountant should know what the leadership implications are from the numbers,
Mm, that's a good one. I like that.
right? You can't,
Mhm.
right? It so, but I think especially management accounting.
So I have a question. How do you convince someone did you use the numbers? How did you convince them to move from, this luxury? The idea sounded so good and it wasn't. Did you? How did
Well,
you
okay.
bring this to
So
them?
this was I told the story in the book. So we had a daily cash flow. What checks are we getting in today? What
Wow.
checks have to go out today? The company was literally within days of of
Oh,
of of shutting down. So we were watching the cash very, very carefully. And I asked the question, what if we have, okay, now we have some cash and we have some cash, we can invest in anything. What's our strategy? What's our short-term strategy? What will bring back cash the soonest?
yeah.
So if we have $10,000, what would you put $10,000 in that will bring $10,000 back and then
Right.
some as fast as possible? And someone raised their hand and said, the military shoe. By
Yeah.
the way, by the way, it was not my brilliance that came up with this and determined that it was strategy problem.
Mm,
The strategy problem comes from part of my turnaround methodology is to talk to everyone and we treat everyone
right.
with respect and look for who has a glint in their eye. Someone had a glint in their eye and said, in the old regime, I'd get fired for talking about this ugly shoe, but you want $10,000 back to come back as $14,000 in 30 days? Pay for the shoes, ship them.
Yeah.
The government will pay us back 14. Okay, good.
There you go.
So, right, it was not my brilliance. It was, but and
But
by the way,
it was asking the right question.
and why are we talking about questions in this in this
Yeah.
webinar? We're talking about the asking questions
And
because
that's
we're none of us are going to have all of the answers. So we're asking questions, we're getting the right, we're getting replies from as many people as you can. It
okay.
wasn't, none of this came from my brilliance. Today
No,
is maybe a little bit, but from
it came from asking the right questions, and
came from asking the right questions.
it came from your process of talking to everyone, not just talking to the CEO, not just talking to the CFO, but
Correct.
really, yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Because here's the thing. If you have a team, and this comes back to that legacy question, if you have a team that says, I've looked at the map and I think we should go in this direction, and they've asked the question of themselves 5 or 6 times, they come up with the same uh, answer. Asking it the seventh time is likely to come up with the same answer. So you've got to challenge yourself. And by the way, I've been named CEO of a couple of companies in the private equity world, and I've made mistakes where I said, I see no other way than doing this. I think we're really here. Talk about it with as many people as possible. We agreed with each other and we made a mistake.
Mm.
It's part of playing the game,
It's part of playing the game. Thank you.
right?
I'm so
Right?
glad. And there's no shame in it. It's how you handle it afterwards.
I had a board
How
that was pretty
you
mad about one of them, but okay.
but it is, but it can result in a turnaround. And how do you handle that? And
Right, right.
I love this. Okay.
Yeah. Here's a second. So if you'd like, Lisa, maybe we should let our participants spend a moment now absorbing this question. This would be question number one that they would have with themselves in their company, or if they're an advisor of their clients, the strategy errors. And
What's
in general, I would say this is a strategy where your capabilities are unproven.
hmm
Think of the dress shoe, where your marketing channels are uncertain.
hmm
Think of, I don't know, your newest Snapchat campaign, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever else that someone has come into you to say, you really need this new tool to do this new whiz bag thing. I'm working with a company now. They're spending a lot of money on marketing channels where the marketing channels are uncertain. Turns out they're making strategy errors to to chase something that's not paying off.
They were
Um,
throwing it at the wall and hoping it would stick.
right. And then, or where the competition is punishing, where you say, I really believe that I'm the best Gucci loafer guy around. Hmm. Maybe Gucci is doing a better job than you are. Maybe it's not working. So that would be my challenge for
Okay.
participants here. Question number one is, are you making strategy errors? And just this would be a way of allowing yourself to think about how do you raise that question? How do you raise the possibility that the revenue is not that all revenue isn't equal, that there may be
Right, too.
revenue in here where our capabilities, our channels, or our competition is making it less valuable to us.
And that, and again, I love this question, and I love everything that you've said about it. And we are often, telling our clients, break up your revenue into different revenue streams, because then you can see this. You can see this easily. What revenue stream is profitable? Right. You might be doing $1 million in this revenue stream, but your costs are almost $1 million. So is it worth it?
Yeah,
No, it's not. You have to go back to everything that you're saying, Walter. It's like, is it profitable? But
right.
having it broken up is where you can see this easily. And you can know if you've made an error, a strategical error.
Right. And so again, marrying accounting,
Mm,
leadership, and strategy for the moment.
yeah,
And if I can geek out for a minute, this is your chart of accounts. Do I have
so
my revenue? Do I have my revenue line? Do
yeah.
I know what my costs are to develop the revenue? If you
Mhm.
don't, chances are you are probably experiencing some of these questions in ways that you can't easily answer them.
Yeah.
Wow, I never thought we'd be talking chart of accounts.
I know. How
I know, but
exciting. Who
I know,
doesn't love the chart of
Arch,
accounts?
Arch,
What is
Arch,
wrong with people who don't love that stuff?
Arch. I just, I can't see people here. I can see you, but looking at you, I know my audience. Oh,
Hopefully when you said chart of accounts, their eyes didn't glaze over. But
no,
I
no,
think
they're so happy, just like you.
I'm so glad he said that. Oh my God.
Here's here's a second case that will address the second question. And this speaks to a lovely, lovely second generation printing company that was in the packaging field. And they did very, very large format packaging with craft boxes and cardboard and wax board um, and over they had one of the largest presses in the country in the South. And over time, they added HP printers to add different kinds of shrink wrap and vinyl packaging to the mix. Um, the company, second generation, everyone knew this offset press. It knew it very well. That process was very well understood. The vinyl printers, those products, they were new materials, they were new customers. The customer service operation was a little shaky on some of it, uh, but um, but they were aware that they had some training challenges, and um, company was in the packaging field. They were so confident of their strategy that they discounted their prices because they wanted to show the world. I mean, maybe I'm not saying this right, but they discounted their prices in order to solidify their their place as market leader. They
Right.
were a market leader. Let's solidify it and let's show our customers that not only are we the best, we're extremely competitive. Uh, two revenue lines, and asking simple questions. I said, okay, in that large press, and by the way, as you said, I came out of the printing industry,
Yeah.
and I love printing. Um, ask the question: when was the last time you understood your cost of manufacture? And they'd go, well, let's see. Joe was here then. I think we did a formal study, oh, 5, 7 years ago. But oh, don't worry, I've kind of I figured that rule of thumb, I kind of added some to it. We know our costs. They didn't know their costs. In the 5 or 7 years, the cost of electricity had gone up, cost of
Mhm.
insurance, heat, light, and power, uh, supplies, employees, and then you put a discount on top of a not very
Something
great
that's already not
margin.
profitable. Yeah.
They were losing money.
Ah,
So so this was an error of measurement.
mm.
Beautiful strategy. Look at that press.
It is. Looks great.
They were right now.
They were
Again,
in demand too.
there was a tiny bit of inefficiencies. There were a tiny bit of company culture and waste in the shrink wrapping and other packaging, other printed materials that they were putting together. And we had to address that. But by and large, for the purpose of this discussion, they made a measurement error. They they identified their core, but they didn't profit from it because they didn't ask the right question. So here's what that P&L looked like. The measurement error was in product costing. We improved the gross margin by 19%. And by the way, they actually not only took away the discount, but over time they raised prices. So the discount was running, to some people was running 15 or 20%, and for others it was running 10 to 15, but we raised prices about 4% overall.
So I'm going to ask you a question on this. So obviously you should know what your cost is, and you should be looking at it on a regular basis. How often can you raise your prices?
Oh boy,
I know that's a very loaded question, and it's probably different by industry, but I mean, it happens a lot. Like you realize, like you're making a cost error, and
I would say, look, I think we're operating in a very difficult economic environment now. I think we're making errors in our economic policies that are increasing prices. In a low inflation environment, people were raising their prices about every year or two. And I say that because what you want to show is respect for the customer.
Right.
And also respect for the process. You don't want to, in those, I don't know if, change your website or change materials or change the catalog, change your distribution arrangements, whatever anything that involves pricing tends to touch a lot of people. Every year or two in a low inflation environment was right. I think now, out of respect for the customer, it is okay to do it every year. If you are doing it more frequently than that, then that means our country is in a very high inflationary environment. That's what Hungary was doing. Hungary was a very high inflation country. They were doing it every 6 months, every 3 months, because they had the local currency had very, very high inflation. They had to increase costs. And by the way, that's a debilitating experience. So as long as we can, as we get our economy back under some sort of into a lower inflation environment, I would advocate, if we can, no more than every year. But that's, maybe you're in an environment, but maybe, listen, if you're a gas station,
you have to fluctuate.
You have to fluctuate
with the prices.
But for me, I'm an expert in business to business companies, or even in the many service companies or restaurants or hospitality. You don't want to be raising your prices so frequently. People notice that. If you're a commodity business and all you're doing is selling, if you're selling copper, if you sell copper to a copper dealer, you've got to change it hourly.
Yeah.
But in a business to business environment, the kinds of companies that families own or private equity firms own, I would think in terms of about a year.
And that leads to, creating trust. Because I think when you raise your prices more than once in a year, it kind of it starts to deteriorate that relationship that you have.
I think so. So in business to business and many business to consumer, raise it. And by the way, there's a reason that gas stations are hated.
Yeah. Because they can change. They actually had to create a rule.
They changed the price of gas. The price of gas that was in their tank in the ground had not changed when the war in Iran started.
No.
But they changed the price that afternoon because they could.
Yep.
So respect would be the way. So whatever, maybe more generally, whatever you find is honest to your bottom line and respectful to the customer. How's that?
I like that. That's an excellent rule. I like that.
Good. And you see that this gross profit up 19%. And then we did find some errors. We did find some customer service training issues on the processes and procedures. And there we go, net profit 25%. So then the question for our participants, question 2, on the assumption that this is something that, if not addressed over time, will degrade your financial performance. And we could talk about finance, we could talk about budgeting, we could talk about finance generally. I'm going to talk about measurement errors as being something very, very specific to your gross margin, and say, if your costs are not either updated or understood or acted upon, and acting is everything. Remember, it's accounting plus leadership knowing accounting. You've got
Yep.
to act, right? We're managers. We're not just accountants. We're not just what do they call it? Bean counters. Bean counters is a bad
It's a
it's a
bad
demeaning
term.
term. It's a demeaning term, and you know the story from the book. I say whenever I see people talk about bean counters, I know that there's a lack of leadership in the company
Yeah.
because I want everyone to be a bean counter. I want
Yeah,
the everyone to understand what our costs are and how do we can make them better. So bean
that's true.
counters it's a degrading term, but leadership and accounting together means we act on our costs. We measure and then we act.
You mentioned many times that you said people knew there was problems. They knew it. They knew that, oh, yes, of course we have two systems. And they didn't act upon it. So knowing it and acting upon it it's very powerful. I think sometimes what happens, they just don't know what to do.
Yeah. Look, that's primarily in the execution side. In the measurement side, I've had I, I had a company that had a company had a warehouse in Shreveport, Louisiana, losing money, and they had measured the revenue of the warehouse by through some funky method of saying, well, we have revenue from, I don't know, Canada that goes through Shreveport. It didn't help Shreveport. And when I pointed this out, the people could say, oh, measurement error, done. So for measurement errors, there doesn't seem to be a great deal of
They don't know.
hesitancy to change. Although in that particular case, the company started in Shreveport, there was a certain amount of um,
Biased.
uh, uh, be fear about making change, but
Um,
sometimes those changes have to happen. Anyway,
yeah.
my question for our participants is for in your company or in other or companies that you're advising, if they're not updated, understood, acted upon, that would be a question that I would ask. And by the way, this happens to all of us. I have only recently gone through, my firm is vanishingly small. Do you know how much I spend on software? I
I,
didn't,
I,
right? I didn't. I now do,
yep.
right? But I thought software was going to help me in my marketing. I thought software would help me in my accounting. I thought software would help me in my communications. Turns out when I looked at the cost of the software versus the objectives, it didn't work. And it
Well,
takes sometimes you have to have a formal moment
yes.
to say, let's make sure we understand our costs.
So in this measurement errors, my favorite report is profit and loss by percent of income. It shows you what percentage your costs are of that income.
Yeah.
And software is one of them. Insurance. It allows you to understand what is made up of that income. How
We
much
should
of it
do
is going
we
away?
should do a, listen, we should do another talk about the cost of quality. Because
Oh,
cost of quality, I do a cost of quality talk where we talk about your main percentages and surveying over time and going, what has changed in our main costs over time?
wow.
How do we achieve the quality without how do we maintain quality that we had in 2024 and address it in a 2026 cost environment? Often
Yeah,
often the cost of quality is a measurement or execution error.
that's
Speaking of which,
interesting.
I want to keep to your timetable.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Casual restaurant chain. Third question. This is a chain that it was essentially a pancake house. I said to them, what is your core product? They said, we're really going to come out with a burrito. It's going to be great. We love Chipotle's burrito. It's going to be great. Okay. So they couldn't identify their core product. Um, and said, which stores are doing well? Well, we never looked at stores by profitability. Okay, that's an error of measurement. But really, what struck me about this company was um, there was a great deal of strife in the company, and everyone was mad at everyone else. And turns out that um, each of the regional managers had been given had demanded had been given leave to have their own coffee roaster because they wanted to be responsive to their local customers. So in New Orleans, they added chicory coffee, and in New York, they had mild roast, and in Seattle they had dark roast, and everyone got their own roast, everyone got their own blend, everyone had their own preferred coffee. Guess what? All of the systems use the same bun filter system. So guess where the number one source of complaint was in the company? Coffee. Guess what the number one product was? Coffee.
Coffee has a very high profit margin, if you don't know.
Coffee, it should have been a 90% profit margin. It should have been huge cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And instead they were getting Yelp reviews saying, this is a pancake house that doesn't know how to make coffee.
Mm.
So this is what I'm calling an execution error.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, I mentioned this case, we had to use an X. We had to close some stores. They were losing money. Short-term strategy, we had no capital. We had to close the stores. But for the purpose of this discussion, coffee was something they had been aware of.
Mm.
They knew that this was an issue. And guess what? In companies where I think of a company, and I'm not a yeller. I've been CEO, I don't know, 6 times. I don't like yelling. This company where there's a lot of yelling and a lot of blame. Guess the blame was a symptom of execution errors. So let's talk about the question that you would ask your folks. Well, so here's the P&L. We closed some stores. We improved the offering. We did not did not offer the burrito. And by the way, they were offering products that said, yeah, we're really going to offer open-faced sandwiches. And then the portioning was wrong. And they had food waste going right to the bottom line.
Yeah.
And we fixed the coffee problem. And instead of marketing burritos in a pancake house, and by the way, this is I'm exaggerating a little bit for the purpose of illustration, but market your core product to core customers.
Mm-hmm.
Please, people, do not market non-core products.
No.
Why would
It's
you?
a waste of time.
Right. Why would you market your non-core product?
Time and money. And
right.
Absolutely.
Right. So market your core product to core customers. It's so much easier than taking a header. So, but this was a dramatic turnaround. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the question for our folks is, are you seeing execution errors? This is operations inefficiency. Maybe training is an issue. Maybe this is an area where you receive complaints. But I'm going to tell you a hint. There are often long-term problems, and I mentioned this before. People said to me, I said, oh, your operations inefficiency for customer service. Yeah, we knew about that. Thank you. I know you know about that. Let's act on it. Right. and in a world where we want, W. Edwards Deming, one of the great, the founder of the quality movement, he said, if you can't define your business as a process, you don't know what you're talking about. And if you find blame in a company, I'm blaming the HR rep, I'm blaming my salesman, I'm blaming customer service. It's because you don't have a process. So my hint for this question would be, if you're something that has been bothering you for a long time would be the hint, or something where there's blame, where you're really mad at someone. Well, maybe that blame is not the answer. Maybe it's a process question.
And that's an excellent point on processes, because if something happens more than once, you know that it's an issue over and over. It is typically a process. And blame, someone just said this to us today. They're like, when you start blaming outside of you, it might be you.
Well, sure.
When you're pointing the finger, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you.
Right. And by the way, everyone thinks of turnaround as being cost-cutting, brutal, harsh. I hope you've gotten a perspective here that no blame, no, we don't want to add to the anxiety in the company. We ask as many people as we can. We're trying to help the situation. We're not there to hurt anybody. We're there to understand and act. And that's simply, that's what I've done for 40 years.
And you bring empathy to your...
Try to, I mean, at all levels. And by the way, many times like in these execution issues, you go to the, if you have a shipping dock, go to the shipping dock.
Mm.
Say, what are the issues that are, what are the things that you see as being real issues? They tell you what returns are coming back. They tell you what products are being delivered to the wrong place. They tell you where the warehousing is wrong. They tell you where something is coming in damaged. The shipping people can have this X-ray vision of the company.
Mhm.
Ask the shipping, ask people at the lower levels. Don't ask the vice president for shipping.
Yeah. Now,
Not that
people who
not that they would lie to you, but
they
they're
don't
not
know.
they're not going to have the perspective. Ask
That's
someone
true.
who sees it every day, and you start getting your thing. And by the way, it just shows respect inside the company.
It's true.
You've got a great way to make someone feel better about their observation. You've got a leader on the shipping dock. Use that leadership,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
no, it's true. And when you tap in to those people who are doing the work, you make them feel important and they feel like they're part of solving the problem because they
Absolutely.
know
And
there's a problem.
they are. Listen, they're probably of the 60 top companies I've talked about. I try to talk to everybody, and I've
Mm,
never been in a company where there isn't someone who's as determined to turn around the company as the CEO or owner.
hmm.
Use
That's
that, use
great.
that. That's a resource. I don't know if that's true in all, I've worked in several countries, but mostly the United States. I think there's something about the US. We want the company to succeed. And
Hmm.
sometimes they'll say, I've been waiting for someone to ask me this question for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Here's
fantastic.
here's where I'm going to marry the accounting and the strategy and leadership all in one thing. But I wanted to use the ledger paper that I started with. Have we identified our core products and core customers? That's a strategy question.
Hmm.
We talked about legacy. And is every revenue worth the same? Is every dollar of revenue worth the same to us? No, that's strategy.
Yeah.
So that first question is going to be your revenue line on your P&L for your accountants, or for you, at least I'll say on your chart of accounts. Ooh,
Thank you.
yes, I know. Have you identified measurement errors? Measurement errors are primarily, I'm going to say, your major cost of product. That, in accounting terms, is your gross margin. So now we've talked about we've married our leadership and strategy questions to revenue and gross margin. And then, are there long-standing execution issues? That's your operating margin. We have
Mm,
just fixed the P&L. And we did this, by the way, you may have seen in the examples that I gave before. Each one had a revenue component, a gross margin component, and an operating margin component. That's the way we turn around a company. Now,
You, this has been amazing. I can't, I'm so glad you have a picture of your book. So Walter, thank you so much. And I know that you typically charge a lot of money to turn around companies, and you've provided this information for free, and it's in your book. And I'm putting in the chat right now as a link to your book. And it is excellent. I've actually read it, and the format is excellent because he tells stories, and then from that he pulls all the information. So it's easy to understand. It's an easy read, but it is a wealth of information. So thank you so much for being with
please remember that, remind people that it's also funny.
it. It is. It is entertaining for sure.
So I tried, listen, when I was growing up, read a lot of Tom Clancy. Tom Clancy has chapters of like a page and a half. I said, I hate business books that have these like 40-page chapters and you forget where you are. So short chapters, quick ideas, and then hopefully entertaining,
Well, because us business owners have a very small attention span.
right? And I
It's very, very short. But thank you so much for being here.
thank you for having me, and thank you for your for lightening it up and make it so much fun for me.
Good. I'm so glad. Next time, everyone, we're meeting on May 21st, and we are going to be talking about the Chief Everything Officer trap, how founder-led businesses can scale without running everything through them. And we are going to have Felicia Patrick, who is a fractional Chief Operating Officer, here as our expert to talk about all kinds of things if you are the chief everything officer, you probably need to hear this. Thank you, Walter. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so
And
much.
I
Talk to you
will
soon.
talk to you soon. Take
Right,
care.
right. Bye.